Well, it looks like I'm live. I've never done a live before on YouTube, and I'm trying to use a wider angle. So let's do this thing. Let's do this. I'm going to talk about exactly what prayer weaving is because I haven't done this on YouTube, and I know there's been a few people that have been watching the little shorts that I've been putting out there, kind of giving people an idea of what prayer weaving is. I think I've actually come from a long heritage of prayer weavers. My grandmother was a school teacher. Got our little bell here. And she used all kinds of things like Sunday school and so forth, and little wordless books. I discovered in the Far East that there were missionaries to China that would use wordless books, pictures. And how did I get started on this anyway? Well, I'm going to talk about that today. I'm going to let you know just exactly how it all got started. I used to sit in church and I would listen to the person speaking. When I was a kid, when I'd listen and take notes, I would just take whatever was coming out of the mouth of the person speaking as gospel. Like somehow they knew more than I did. But in college, I went to this church, and it was a part at the time of the Southern Baptist Convention. But this particular church was outside the box. It was in Kansas City area. And this church let all kinds of people speak, including women, which back in the late 80s was pretty controversial. And then they crossed the line completely. They let the women pass the offering plate. Isn't that interesting? Women start touching the money, and all of a sudden they've got their panties in a wad. So they were in the process of getting kicked out of the Southern Baptist Convention. And I really, really love this place because this is the place where I learned about my brain and that every thought that we have is a communication of sorts. This thing on top of our bodies is like a radio receiving station. It's probably why I ended up majoring in radio because I had an affinity for that sound, something coming through the mysterious ether and into our ears that you could just sit in your car and have someone speaking to you. But this pastor, his name was Paul, actually, Paul Smith, and he was speaking about how to hear from God. And he said, every single thought that you have is either coming from your best self, your worst self, from the adversary, or from God. Because see, there's an unseen realm, and we should believe that because we talk to each other through the unseen realm. That's what I'm doing right now, going live on YouTube. But that's where it started. This pastor teaching us how to listen to God and knowing, wow, I can hear God. And you just have to capture each little thing that comes into your brain and go, now wait a minute. I'm receiving that. Of course, even your own thoughts you're receiving from yourself somewhere outside of this matrix. And then there's the processing that the brain does inside the matrix. But as they were getting ready to get kicked out of the Southern Baptist Convention, he talked about what the Baptists really were. And I was so angry. I was angry enough to spit. I didn't want to be a Baptist anymore because, well, I was a woman. And I was going into radio because I couldn't go into speaking because I was a woman. And then here's this place where I felt affirmed, and they were getting kicked out of this larger organization. And I was mad. I'm like, I am not a Baptist anymore. I'm done with this stuff. And then he began to speak about the history of that tradition and how the original ones, they were always arguing about, do you dunk or do you sprinkle? And so I was like, you definitely dunk. But he said the first ones actually poured. It was a protest against not being free. Instead of like sprinkling your babies and telling them what they are. It was the ability to choose. And this man in the military had filled up his helmet and dumped water on his own head, going, I choose this. So it was about freedom. And at the time that the Baptists were early on, they were accepting of the crazy Quakers and all of the fringe groups. They were the ones that were free. They were the ones that accepted everyone. So I thought, you know what? I guess there's a part of my DNA that is Baptist. I don't know if those Baptists are Baptist anymore because it was about freedom. And that's where I learned about listening. So these are little threads that I've tugged on in my life. So after that point, when I'd go in and I'd listen, unlike when I was younger and I would just take notes and write down whatever they were speaking about, I began to color outside the lines a little bit. I would know that whatever that person is saying, and if you're listening to me, please do the same thing. Capture these things that are coming in from my mouth because I'm downloading. I'm downloading through the ether, and as I'm as I'm hearing it's coming through me and I'm speaking it. Could be coming from my best self, could be coming from my worst self, could be coming from the adversary, depends on if I've had a nap and enough to eat, or it could be downloading from the true source. I got to capture each thing that comes out. So as I would go to sermons and talks and all kinds of things from that point on, I began to listen in a different way. Learned about listening from Linda Newton in college too. She was interpersonal communication and active listening. So now when I'm going to sermons, I'm actively listening and I'm capturing each word. And sometimes I'm right, like they're saying something, I'm like, yeah, that's true. And I write it down. And sometimes I'd go, I don't know. And then I would get a thought while they were speaking, inspired by what they were speaking. These are threads, these are weaves. And then I would write that down and pay attention to those thoughts. We destroy speculation, every lofty thing that's raised up against this kind of knowledge. And we take every single thought that comes into this receiving station, into this radio receiving station, we take it captive and we make it obedient to the vast mind of Christ, the vast mind of Messiah, the vast mind of that which saves us, the vast mind of God is love. He's also called Emmanuel. He's God with us, the vast mind of love that is with us. Humans are really big things. I think I need to put my phone on Do Not Disturb while I'm live here. Got to get used to this YouTube thing. It's going to be a little rough. It's not going to be perfect. That's okay. That's okay. But anyway, back to the listening, back to the weave, back to the transformation that comes from the weave. You see, you were knitted together in your mother's womb, knitted together. That's a weave. Back in the days of Joseph, there's all kinds of terrible things and so much suffering that happened to that character. I won't go into the details of the story, but at the end of it, those that had been unjust towards him, justice and righteousness, that's the same thing, justice. Things had been unjust, and those that had been unjust towards him were feeling terrible about it. And he said, no, what the enemy was trying to weave for evil, God was weaving for good. So all of it, everything, absolutely everything is spiritual. But listening in a new way. I'd listen to speakers, all kinds, from pastors to TED Talks. There's truth everywhere. Sometimes it comes out of the mouth of a little kid. take note. But capturing all these things. And I started taking notes in a different way. See, I'm a word person first. I do things with words. Some people are more number oriented. Some people are more picture oriented. Some people feel things. You'll find as you engage in this practice of weaving, you'll get better at doing all of these things. But I decided to switch it up a little bit. And I got this new notebook it says Leap. And I started doing notes in a different way. I would listen and I'd put some words down, but I'd also started making pictures. And sometimes it would be related to what I saw in the room. Sometimes it would be related to the words that were coming out of the speaker's mouth. And sometimes they were just like, I don't know where it came from. But while I was listening, so while you're listening, while you're watching, and sometimes I use objects and so forth, what do you hear? What do you see? Not just what do you see in this little weave, but what's coming into your mind? Capture it. Pay attention to it. Pay attention to even crazy distractions. Pay attention to little feelings in your body. But I want to show you something kind of interesting that happened. So I would engage in this practice, and I have lots of pictures, and I'm not an artist. My sister is, but I'm not. But I would just draw all kinds of things. All kinds of crazy things. And one day I was listening to a speaker. It was a speaker that would eventually encourage me to make my way to Israel. But while I was listening, I did no words. I just drew this weird stuff right here. I drew this. And after drawing this, I decided, because they were talking about a trip to Israel, and I signed up to go. And when I was there, I met a weaver. Now, he didn't wear this shirt. He actually had a t-shirt that had the word shit all over it. Buddhism is this kind of shit. Hinduism is this kind of shit. Christianity is this kind of shit. But he looked just like this guy right here. And he was like a legit Jew. He was a mystical Jew. And he was in a holy city called Tzufat. It was this mystical fig tree. It was like 100 years old. It grew right up through the building. And so all of a sudden, this picture meant something. And I found it. He sent me a picture later because I commented on his shirt, and I connected with him on WhatsApp. And there was all this smoke around his head, like from the fire here. But anyway, so I met that guy when I was in Israel, and I had drawn this picture 5 months before. That's where I bought this. They were selling tallits. Tallits are these things that you put over your head to pray in the Hebrew tradition. You cover your head. Everyone covers their head to pray. Isn't that interesting? They just have the women do it in the church sometimes. That's why women wear hats to church a long time ago. And some still wear head coverings. It's actually an honoring thing because Jesus covered his head to pray. But anyway, they were selling these tallits, and I didn't have the money for it. So they kind of look like this. But I ended up buying this instead from the weavers. They pray over each and every one of these threads. They pray over the threads. And I wanted to have threads that were prayed over. But I didn't have the, several $100s to thousands of dollars to have a custom one made. So I just bought this. I think I gave like $75 US for it. That was in my budget. But I use this all the time now. I carry these little cards in it. I wanted to start learning Hebrew because it's a really mysterious thing. There's so much art in Israel. But I got these cards later. They're all woven together. And they fit just right in this little prayer pouch as I'm learning about Hebrew letters. And it's woven together My church went on a time where we were all praying, and it was our team's turn to be praying. And people had always said about me, I weave people together. So I wanted to call how I pray something. So I decided to call it prayer weaving. And it was tied to this, which was tied to this, which was tied to listening, which was tied to noticing and seeing things in the world. Because prayer is a dialogue. That's why you want to do prayer and meditation, because we need to learn to listen. Sometimes you just get still and you just get your eyes closed and you get into the deep darkness. And you notice the light in the darkness. And you begin to hear. And you observe those thoughts and you go, you start sorting them out. This is my best self. This is my worst self. This is the adversary. And this is new. This is deep. This is truth. And you grab a hold of it. You'll hear it coming out of people's mouths sometimes. It can be from anywhere. It can be a song. I hear pieces all the time. I listen to that song, Blinded by the Light. And I listen to the lyrics and I look through the lyrics and I dig through the lyrics and I found things even in a chopsticks sound. Chopsticks is a symbol of heaven and earth, actually. But there was a lot of depth. It's everywhere. But it started with taking notes, capturing my thoughts, knowing that my brain is like a radio receiving station and my mind is outside of it from meditating. And then weaving and discovering that I hear things or see things. And then the one that was really cool, and there's probably more in this book that I don't know about, but I was listening to another, and I'll have to figure out how to put this picture in a little short, but I drew this right here. And we went to the Sea of Galilee when I was in Israel. And when we got off of the boat from the Sea of Galilee, there was this rock sculpture. And I had drawn this 5 months before going to Israel. It's kind of odd. There's like a little thing down here. There's this weird shaped face. And then there's like a face inside of this head. But when I got off of the little boat ride we took on the Sea of Galilee, and we were coming through this garden of rock sculptures, I saw this. I show people the picture of the rock sculpture, and then I show them this, and they think that I drew the rock sculpture. But this was first. It was just noticing. Maybe I had to draw something so weird and so radical that when I saw it in the Matrix, I would go, I've seen this before. Time is relative. Your mind is outside of time, space, and matter. That movie, The Matrix, it's really a documentary, you know. But we walk outside of time, space, and matter. Prayer is not just a list of things that you're ordering like a DoorDash from God. It's a communication. And a lot of it has to include listening. And right now I'm doing a lot of talking, but as you're hearing this, maybe you're kind of getting an idea of what the weave is, what the threads are, and how this thing works. It just went on and on. I started weaving back in January of 2023, and I've done it almost every single day. I took about 6 weeks off. The last 3 days I've taken off. Sometimes I just do it wherever I'm at. But I notice things, and I use symbols now because some people think in pictures. We've got to get out of our heads and into our hearts. We want to change. We want to notice colors. And as I continue to weave, I'm gonna walk through some colors. I'm going to walk through some things that open doors. I'm going to walk through some things that change the matrix. And maybe this is resonating with you, or maybe you're just like, what is this chick talking about? Weaving, prayer weaving. Guess you'll have to keep showing up to hear more. But that's how it started. Me just listening to pastors. Now when I listen to someone speak, if they said some stuff that was really true, I like to go up to them afterwards and say, you're a great listener. Because if anything comes out of someone's mouth, they're downloading it. They're listening to their best self. Or if something that's not so good comes out, maybe they say, hey, I'm a piece of shit. Oh, worst self for sure. Not true. Or maybe the adversary. There's no hope. You're trapped. You'll never get ahead. Some of that stuff comes, those tapes that you play in your head from your past, trying to be defined by your past, not living in the present. This temple, this body, this thing that I reside in, this avatar, only exists in the now. Past isn't real. The future, if it's not filled with hope, if it's not filled with love and joy and courage and peace and patience and goodness and faithfulness and gentleness and self-control, my choice, then it's not truth. It's not real. And when I get things that are just really outside of myself, like epiphanies that we have, or downloading from source, we're downloading from the source of love and light. We're hearing. And you'll start to notice as you weave, as you start to pull on the threads that are in your life, and you might even be able to go back and go, there's a thread, there's a thread. And just like that weaver that I drew and then Matt had shit all over his shirt, just like this guy who's weaving, and he prays over every thread that they weave on that loom. I'm counting the pieces of my life as part of the thread, and I put them right in here. I've been making little cards to replace these from learning the Hebrew letters that I'm going to put in my little prayer weaving pouch. This symbol right here, the dove. I actually live in Colombia. It means the dove. I'm connected with a group of people on the other side of the world. Colombo also means the dove. And I picked this thing up in Sufat. I don't know what that word means. I need to look it up, but there's a dove. So maybe it's also the dove. Don't know why I haven't thought to look that up. But they're threads. We pay attention to them. We put them together. Some of them are dark. Some of them are light. Some of them are colorful. Some of them are rather bland and earthy. The pieces of your life, the stories that is you. We want to start picking them up. We want to start paying attention to everything. Because even the rocks in the earth cry out. And I'm going to end this little weave with communion. Because there's a gateway. There's a doorway to go through to get out of the matrix. There was a tree a long time ago. Not this tree. It was a tree of knowledge of good and evil. This is good. This is bad. We got to sort it all out. But there's also this tree in the beginning. It was a tree of life. It was a tree of immortality. It was a tree of wisdom. It was a tree of light and life. And I want to take a bite from that tree. Got a round cracker like the medicine wheel, like the four corners of the earth. And I break it into 4 pieces. I'm going to dive deeper into this. Bread. We're not supposed to just live by bread alone, but by every word, every frequency, every vibration that comes from the source of love. And there was a time when love stepped into this matrix, and love was with us, and love was broken. Love would rather die than live without you. And so when I take a bite of this living piece of bread, this little cracker that's a symbol, I do that intentionally. Not just this flesh in the matrix. It's like I'm just taking a bite of the red pill. It's the red pill that gets you out of the matrix. You take a bite of this thing. You put this living bread inside of you, and you take a sip. I just got my coffee this morning. It's pink. Red mixed with white. It's magic, this red pill. It's filled with blood, with sacrifice. Blood is water. Blood is a symbol of life. Blood is water. Cleanses. It's the only substance in the earth that's in 3 forms naturally. So are you. So I'm taking this cup and transforming it into a sip of the blood, living water of life, coming from the sap of the tree of life. And when you take communion, bread and the blood from the gate, you just put the key into your body, and you're going to start changing. You're going to open your eyes. Wake, O sleeper. Rise from the dead. Start listening. Start paying attention and see all the things around you, everywhere inside the matrix. Every time you eat, every time you drink, be reminded your best self, your mind, which is actually seated in another place. It's in the heavenly realms, outside of the matrix, outside of time and space and matter. If you've woken up, if you've taken the red pill, if you've gone through the gateway, by stripes healed, by brokenness, love became sin, so that you would be righteousness, the justice in the world. Gonna eat all 4 pieces of my bread, 1 for each corner of the globe. My little cup says, life is a series of 1,000 tiny miracles. Oh, so many miracles. We won't even figure out how to notice all of them, but you'll notice some. If you start weaving and you notice that your whole life is a prayer, it's a conversation, it's inputting thoughts into the brain Things in the matrix that you notice and you think they mean this because you've defined them for so long with your worst self, with this flesh. You got to wake up. You got to take control of this avatar in the matrix. Take a bite of the living bread. Dunk it in the blood, the red pill. I'm going to invite you to start weaving with me. Weaving, believing, capturing your thoughts, paying attention. Did that come from that person's worst self, their best self? Are they just using their brain as a receiving station and grabbing a hold of things from the unseen world? A third of the things in the unseen world, not so good. Not so good. But it all gets woven back. Even this thing right here, this cross, this execution device, the forces of the adversary thought, yeah, we'll just destroy love that's with the humans. We're going to destroy it. We'll kill it off. Of course, when they did that, they just opened the gate. That old cross thing didn't work out so well for them. And we're coming up to the end of this age that we've been living in. Humans have advanced this round. You know, there's lots of rounds. Hi, John. But humans have advanced. They've gone through this gate, and, you know, we had the agricultural age, moved into the industrial age, and now we're in the information age. Man, all of our heads are getting big. Knowledge, 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 knowledge. Can't get away from it. You better start weaving. We got to start paying attention, because the stuff that's coming at us from every direction, we've got to capture it. Is that coming from their worst self, their best self, the adversary, or is this a download? Is this coming through the gate? Does that thought, that idea, contain the sword, the frequencies of heaven? Is it part of the key of life? Capture it and realize you have the ability to hear God. And God is speaking in everything. All things from him or her. It's not a good pronoun. All things from the Elohim of Elohims. All things through the Elohim of Elohims. All things to the Elohim of Elohims. Let's all wake up. Let's start weaving and believing, transforming this matrix into the kingdom that is supposed to be. Love, 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 love. Now I gotta figure out how to turn this thing off.